Hi, welcome everyone. Here is your HMH lesson for today. This is HMH lesson 7.2, HMH lesson 7.2. We will be reading Miss Moore Thought Otherwise today. This book is not in your HMH books. You will not need your HMH books today. The only thing you will need is your reading graphic organizer, which is in your reading packet. It's the third page. It says text organization, chronological order, and it looks like this. So you're going to need this out, a pencil, and that's it. And you're going to follow along with us. So if you don't have that, you can pause the video now and go get it. Pause the video now. Okay, so once you have your reading graphic organizer, let's get started. Miss Moore thought otherwise. Our reading graphic organizer says text organization, which is chronological order. So what does chronological order mean? It means telling me what happens in the story in the order that it happens. So in the beginning, what happens, the middle, what happens, and the last, what happens. So the clue words that tell us what happens first will usually say first, and then it'll say next. When we're looking for what happens in the middle, it'll say next or then. And then when it says what happens at the end, it'll say finally or last. Informational texts have a structure. Informational texts are stories that give us information or type of organization that fits the topic and the author's purpose. When authors use chronological order, they describe events or the steps in a process in order. This helps show how one event is connected to the next. So why this happened because of this happened because of that. So it helps us put our thoughts in order when we see things or write things in chronological order, which means the way that it happened, okay? So Miss Moore thought otherwise. Before we read the story, let's go over some vocabulary words. Our first word is otherwise. What does otherwise mean? If you think otherwise, you think differently from someone else. So they may think otherwise, but I did not think the joke was funny. That's why he's looking that way. I didn't think the joke was funny. I thought otherwise. So if you think otherwise, you're thinking differently than someone else. We have hiring here. That's a lot of puppies. She's walking a lot of puppies at a time. Hiring someone means paying the person to do a job. So people are paying this woman to walk their dog. They hired her. So hiring someone means paying the person to do the job for you. In this picture, we have smudge. The kid has black paint smudged on his face, or something black smudged on his face. When you smudge something, you get it dirty by smearing something on it. So he likes to smudge dirt on his face while he's playing outside. When you smudge something, you get it dirty by smearing something on it. So when you paint, you normally say, don't smudge the paint all over the paper, right? It means to get it dirty by smearing it everywhere, right? Here, pledge. He's pledging. Looks like he's part of a Boy Scouts. In the morning in school, we sometimes say our Pledge of Allegiance. What does pledge mean? A pledge is a promise to do something. So Scouts take a pledge to help others. So a pledge is a promise, basically. All right, and then we have display. So here we have a lot of fruit displayed in the fridge. This is a fridge maybe in the grocery store. Display. When you display something, you put it where everyone can see it. You display it. I display your work sometimes in the hall where everybody can see it. All right, and then we have retire. We have a woman and a man, and they look like they're in the park having some fun, and maybe they retired. What does that mean? When older people stop working, they retire. So when you stop working, you don't have to work anymore. You retire, okay? And normally when you get older. And then we have deal. It looks like these two kids are giving each other a high five like they just made a deal. If you deal with people by understanding and getting along with them. So they both made a deal. They got along with each other, right? Josh and Francis have learned to deal with one another when they work on projects together. So they deal with each other. They work with one another. All right. We are going to stop there. I think those were all of our words, right? Actually, deal wasn't even one of them. Retire was. All right, sorry. So let's go ahead and get started. Miss Moore thought otherwise.
Miss Moore thought otherwise. How Anne Carroll Moore created libraries for children. Written by Jan Pinborough. Once in a big house in Limerick, Maine, there lived a little girl named Annie Carroll Moore. She had large gray eyes, 7 older brothers, and ideas of her own.
Wow, that's probably a picture of her family, right? What does the phrase Annie thought otherwise tell us about Annie? Maybe that she thought differently than everybody else, right? Okay.
In the 1870s, many people thought a girl should stay inside and do quiet things such as sewing and embroidery. But Annie thought otherwise. She preferred taking wild toboggan rides from the cemetery all the way down past Main Street, or bouncing along in Father's buggy to the sound of Pocahontas's clip-clopping hooves. Through the trees, Annie could glimpse the white mountains, far away in the distance. She dreamed about the world that lay beyond, and about what she would do someday.
So she thought otherwise. She didn't agree that that's what girls should be spending their time doing, right? Limerick Library.
Annie loved the stories and poems Father read aloud to her after dinner. On rainy afternoons, she would climb up to the attic to look at a children's magazine called St. Nicholas. In those days, children weren't allowed to go inside libraries. People didn't think reading was very important for children, especially not for girls. When Annie turned 19, many girls her age were already married. Back then, an unmarried girl like Annie might keep house for her parents, or perhaps become a teacher or missionary. But Annie thought otherwise. She decided to become a lawyer like her father, and day after day she went to his law office to learn how.
So she thought otherwise. What do they mean by that? She thought otherwise. So she didn't agree, right? She didn't agree. She didn't want to get married at that age. She wasn't ready. Instead, she didn't want to become, a missionary, go on a missionary trip or become a teacher. Instead, she said, you know what? I want to be a lawyer like my father. Yep. Sorry, cut off. There we go.
Then in one terrible week, Annie's parents both died from the flu. When her brother's wife died too, Annie stayed home to take care of her 2 little nieces. Venturing beyond the White Mountains would have to wait. After several years, her brother married again, and Annie heard exciting news. Libraries were hiring women as librarians. Annie packed her bags and traveled to Brooklyn, New York, to enroll in the Pratt Institute Library School.
So why do you guys think she was excited? What does she want to do now? She probably wants to work in the library, right? Let's see. It says New York. Let's see.
New York was a big city. Some people thought it was a dangerous place for a young woman to live on her own. But Annie thought otherwise. She loved walking along its busy cobblestone streets, going to the circus and the opera, and riding in a horse-drawn car across the Great Brooklyn Bridge.
So she thought otherwise. She didn't agree with them. She thought it was a nice place to live. Very cool.
Annie studied hard. She graduated from library school and got her first job as a librarian at the Pratt Free Library. Some libraries were beginning to let children come inside, but Annie's library had something brand new, a library room planned just for children. Children could come in and take books off the shelves, and in the evenings, Annie read aloud to them, just as her father had read to her. Word spread about Annie's library, until one day a man named Dr. Bostwick asked her to be in charge of all the children's sections in the 36 branches of the New York Public Library. Miss Moore dressed in her finest hat and suit and visited each library, from Harlem to Chatham Square.
Wow. Why do you think Miss Moore was put in charge of all of the children's sections in the New York Public Library branches? Maybe because she was really good at what she did, right? And she really had a passion for it. She really loved doing that. And because of that, she was really good at it. So she got a promotion. So she got a job to take care of all of the kids, the children's libraries. Let's keep going.
She saw that many librarians did not let children touch the books, for fear that they would smudge their pages or break their spines. They thought if children were allowed to take books home, they would surely forget to bring them back. But Miss Moore thought otherwise. She trusted children, so she created a big black book with this pledge inside. When I write my name in this book, I promise to take good care of the book I use at home and in the library, and to obey the rules of the library. Miss Moore persuaded the librarians to use this pledge so all the children of New York could check out books and take them home.
Oops. There we go. Very cool.
Miss Moore pushed for other changes too. She urged the librarians to take down the silent signs and spend time talking with children and telling them stories. She pulled dull books off the shelves and replaced them with exciting ones such as The Adventures of Tom Sawyer and The Swiss Family Robinson. She wrote book reviews and made book lists to help parents, librarians, and teachers find good books for children, and to encourage book publishers to publish better children's books. But many libraries still kept children's books locked in cabinets or tucked away in corners. They did not have enough books for children or enough shelves to put them on. So when it was announced that a brand new library would be built on 5th Avenue and 42nd Street, Miss Moore was determined to make its new Central Children's Room the best it could be for all the children of New York. Miss Moore had child-sized tables and chairs specially made. She chose beautiful pictures by N.C. Wyeth and other artists to hang on the walls. For the floors, she found rosy pink tiles from Wales. She gathered collections of shells and butterflies to display. Then she filled the shelves with the very best children's books she could find.
She was going to make this really exciting for the kids.
Finally, one warm spring day in 1911, the huge bronze doors of the New York Public Library swung open for the first time.
That's another chronological order word. Finally. So this is what happens in the end after she prepared to make the children's section of the library so pretty and so well put together. Let's see what happens in the end.
Crowds lined the streets as a police escort brought the President of the United States, William Howard Taft, to dedicate the magnificent new library. When the library opened to the public the next day, the children of New York City walked through their own special entrance into the new children's room. Hundreds of new children's books in many languages waited within reach. And beneath every window, a cozy window seat waited for children to curl up in it.
How beautiful. Look at that picture. Says a lot. Wow. That was probably a big deal back then, right? Because they didn't even allow children in libraries back then. But look what she has made out of it, Miss Moore. Very good.
From then on, every day seemed to hold a new surprise in the children's room. Miss Moore organized reading clubs and invited musicians, storytellers, and famous authors like Dr. Seuss to entertain the children.
Very cool. So she kind of built a community, right, with all the kids coming and all the activities going on in the library.
Often, Miss Moore would reach into her handbag and pull out a wooden doll named Nicholas Knickerbocker. Children who were just learning English felt less shy about talking when Nicholas was around. One day, the King and Queen of Belgium visited the New York Public Library. "You must come see the children's room," Miss Moore told the Queen. That day, all the children in the library, from the richest to the poorest, shook hands with the King and Queen. Outside the library walls, 2 world wars, epidemics, and the Great Depression came and went. But inside, the children's room was always warm and bright, a place where children could meet other children and learn interesting things. In big cities and small towns across America, more and more libraries began to copy Miss Moore's Central Children's Room. So did libraries in England, France, Belgium, Sweden, Russia, India, and Japan.
Wow, everyone liked the idea. What does the author mean when she says the children's room was always warm and bright? What do they mean by that? When a place is warm and bright, is it inviting? Does it want to make you go in and spend some time there? Or does it make you want to get out as fast as you can and run away? It's warm and bright. It's inviting. It makes people want to stay there. It makes people feel comfortable there, right? Very good. Very good. All right.
When Miss Moore turned 70 years old, it was time for her to retire. Some people thought she should sit quietly at home, but Miss Moore thought otherwise. Her friends at the library gave her a set of luggage, with a small green suitcase for Nicholas, and she traveled across the country, teaching more people how to make good libraries for children.
Wow, that's awesome. That's beautiful.
Today, libraries across America have thousands of books for children. And thanks to the help of a little girl from Limerick, Maine, who had ideas of her own, any child can choose a book from a library shelf, curl up in a comfortable seat to look through it, and then take it home to read.
How nice. And then here's a little bit about Miss Moore. Awesome. What an awesome story. All right, so now let's focus our attention back to the reading graphic organizer. Okay, so looking at your reading graphic organizer, I went ahead and I'm going to type it into Word what we're going to write because, again, it's going to be really hard for me to write in these little boxes here. So instead, I've just typed it here. You're going to start off by writing the title of the story, which is Miss Moore Thought Otherwise. While you're writing the title of the story, I'm going to talk a little bit about what the author's purpose is for writing the story. What do you all think the author's purpose is for writing the story? Maybe the author's purpose of writing this story is to tell us more about Miss Moore, right? It was like we talked about yesterday, it was a biography about Miss Moore. It told us about Miss Moore's life and the accomplishments that she has achieved, right? So maybe the author is trying to inform us about Miss Moore and how her perseverance to build children's sections in libraries have been so successful to where it's opened opportunities for us today, right? For us children to have a section in the library for us today. How does the author organize the information about Annie Moore? So we talked about that. The author organizes the story in chronological order, what happens first, next, and last, right? So that's what we're going to get to right now. So what's the very first thing that happened in the story? What did they tell us about? Let's go back and look in the story to find out. So I'm going to go all the way back, and we are going to find out what happened first. Okay, so we know that Annie did not live like traditional girls her age at that time did, right? She wanted to go to the library, but she couldn't because they didn't allow kids in the library back then, especially girls. And then she, at 19, she did not want to get married. Okay, so so we're going to write that down in our reading graphic organizer. Miss Moore was not like other girls her age. She wanted a place in the library for children, right? Because before they didn't allow children in the library. So you can pause the video if you need more time to write this down. Okay. Now that you wrote this down, let's see what happens next in the story. So she decides that she's going to move to New York, right? And she's going to work as a librarian in New York City. And she goes to school to become a librarian. So let's write that down. So Miss Moore, oops, there we go. Miss Moore moves to New York to become a librarian. And then what happens? She is promoted to take over all the children's library sections in the city. So remember, what she was promoted, or she is promoted. She was promoted. Promoted means like they gave her a higher position to do something. So she was promoted to take over all the children's library sections in the city. So all of the libraries in the city, she was in the children's section she was in charge of then. So if you want to pause the video to write this down, you can pause it now. Okay, so now moving on. Then she came up with a rule where she wanted to take the silence down. She wanted activities done. She didn't like how they were had the children's section. They had one little lousy shelf in the whole library. Most libraries didn't even have a section. So she said, you know what? I am going to do what? I'm going to do something about it. So she went ahead and got ready to make one of the prettiest and biggest children's sections in the grandest library in New York City. And this was in 1911. So let's write this down. Then, so she decided to make the largest, nicest children's section in the grandest library in the city, in New York. Right, and she started to pick out the colors and get ready for it, and she ordered different material and parts from around the world. She made it really warm and inviting for the kids to come in. She decided to make the largest, nicest children's section in the grandest library in New York. So grandest means in the biggest library. If you want to write biggest instead of grandest, that's fine too. I guess I'll write biggest. Maybe it's easier for you to understand that way. So if you need time to write this down, you can pause the video now. Okay, after you wrote this, let's go ahead and look at what happens last. So we're looking at those words that let us know what happens in chronological order. So finally, or what happens last, is everyone is really impressed with the children's section of that library, where everyone around the world is kind of or most countries around the world are motivated to create a nice children's section in the library, just like Miss Moore did. So last, what happens is Many countries around the world are motivated to create a warm and inviting children's section in the library, like Miss Moore's. Right? So many countries around the world are motivated to create a warm and inviting children's section in the library like Miss Moore's. So if you need time to write that down, you can pause the video now. All right, so that's basically all we're doing today for our HMH lesson. Just make sure you wrote this down on your reading graphic organizer, take a picture of it, turn it in, and that is it for today. All right, guys, if you have any questions, let me know, and I will see you later. Bye.